This, I only just have a couple quick comments on just some of the extensions. And so many of you have heard me talk about the outbreak period. And so effectively what happens, there was a notice that came out a year ago. That notice said that there was effectively a pause in time. And the pause in time states that any clock that was ticking for a number of requirements that are put on us as employers as well as on employees, frozen time. And then during the outbreak period, and when it would actually, the clock would start ticking again once the outbreak period started back up again. However, in that statute, it did say that the service, I'm going to skip past this, just in essence of kind of explaining it. So the IRS and the Department of Labor, they have only specific statutory authority. And what that means is that if they make a decision like they did a year ago, they can only make these decisions for a year. So technically the way this notice read was that the outbreak period shall be the earlier of 1 year or the end of the outbreak period. And the outbreak period, that is defined as the period of time of when they said we're in a national emergency. So I think that was backdated to March 1st of 2020. That's when the national emergency started. Then they're going to declare that the national emergency is over. That date plus 60 days is when the outbreak period concludes. So we're clearly beyond that 1 year statutory requirement. Everybody thought that the outbreak period was probably going to be wrapping up sometime in fourth quarter of last year. It's now evident that that has not happened. And so depending upon any type of communications you received from administrators or from insurance companies, or even just on the news, everybody felt that there was this line in the sand that stated that this clock had to start ticking again on March 1st of 2021, because the statutory authority for these agencies is only 12 months long. So we got a notice that came out, I think it was just about a month, less than a month ago, 3 weeks ago. And it's notice 2021-01. And it effectively explains that this 1 year statutory limitation, that clock doesn't start ticking until the actual date of the event. So it's kind of a little bit of a wiggle room around it. And how this applies to us as plan sponsors is that the delays that they are putting on our participants and our election periods is that we have extensions now or open windows for qualifying event changes. We used to have a limit. You got to notice that, if I get married, I only have 30 days to notify my employer that I have a qualifying event so that I can add my new spouse. However, that 30-day window has stopped ticking. The 60-day election period for COBRA. If I was 15 days into a period for electing COBRA and then the national emergency started, the outbreak period started, I'm still on day 15, even though that could have been 12 months ago. And so the ramifications for kind of us and kind of thinking through the process is that extension of time for everyone making some of these certain decisions that you see up on the screen is still continuing, and that 1 year limitation, again, is going to start on whatever the date of the event is for that specific individual. It is not the date of the national emergency and the outbreak period. I shouldn't do national emergency like that. That is totally, I'm not mean to put it in air quotes, but the national emergency starting, that is not the day, which means is that there still could be some delays and there's still some opportunities for participants to react in operating their benefit plans, as well as for us as plan sponsors in delivering specific required notices that have to go out to our plan participants. So the summary of all this is that if you've been operating kind of as is through the outbreak period anyway, and you've been sending out your notices on time, you've been making sure you're communicating as a plan sponsor to the plan participants or the eligible beneficiaries as we normally would be outside of an outbreak period, there's not a lot you really need to worry about. However, if you have not, if you've been kind of pulling back on some of the action items that were required, and you know that you have some participants that have kind of been pulling back on some action items that were required because of the outbreak period, we kind of have to work with your administrators so that we can kind of learn, well, really, what is their window of opportunity? And so when did their 1 year start ticking? Because that's truly when their end of this outbreak period is going to happen, unless they declare the national emergency over, and then we run out for 60 days if that comes first. So a little bit of clarification on that. I thought it just might be a good opportunity just to run through it, because there's been some media attention on it. There was a lot of news that kind of had their hair on fire that said the outbreak is ending on a calendar date of March, well, technically the 28th, or are we a leap year this year? I don't know, 28th. But that is not the case based upon this disaster relief notice that had just come out.